that is on sites and places of significance to mana whenua. Now, remember, this is supported by culturally sensitive information that is in the confidential agenda. If you want to go and consider any of that information, ask you not to do it in the open agenda. We will have to move into public excluded. So I will, if you could just, is there anybody that wants to refer to any of that sensitive information?
Well,
Councillor Watson?
Just in a very general sense, not identifying any of the locations. So I've just got a question on that. Is it appropriate now, or do you want me to wait?
We're unlikely, unless somebody wants to specifically address one of those sites or places, and if you're identifying its locality and the mana whenua to whom it relates to, one or more, then we'd probably need to go into publicly excluded. If you can address it in a general way, Noel, I think that's okay in the open. It's probably there to build your information base for making the decision in open. That is the excluded, publicly excluded information. So we have Noel Redden, our Manager of Heritage, John Duguid again, and Vrinda.
No.
Anna.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
Anna.
It's fine.
Get it right. Good. And who's going to introduce? Noel.
Yeah. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been workshopped with the members, and so I don't want to go into the detail and add to your earlier issue that it is confidential. I'd just like to raise two issues. The first, there are two aspects to this plan change. The first is, does it meet the criteria in the unitary plan for scheduling, and have we consulted with landowners? And the answer to both those questions is yes. All but the ministry, well, sorry, I shouldn't say that, all but one landowner has not agreed, and we've had further discussions with that landowner, and while they still have reservations, they are less opposed. So I'm confident that this meets the unitary plan scheduling criteria. The second aspect, and it goes to recommendation D up there on the overhead, is that right from the word go, we made it clear to all parties, all iwi, that all iwi needed to sign off all sites before we would include it within the plan change. We've been through a process to ensure that all iwi have been advised of which sites have been nominated. We told them all in October 2017 the sites. We followed that up in July 2018 with a letter, and we had a hui in November the 15th seeking sign-off. And at that November 15 hui, we got sign-off with all but 2 of the 38 sites, and hence D. Unfortunately, not all iwi were at that November the 15th hui, so we haven't had the chance to go back to the nominating iwi and say, there is an issue with one of your sites. Can we please discuss? When officers have looked at those 2 sites, we believe there is a resolution. But as I said, we haven't been able to get both iwi in the same room to discuss that. Hence D. We're recommending that a subcommittee be established of the chair, deputy chair, and a member of the IMSB who can make any changes to the plan change prior to notification, and that plan change quite explicitly with the chair's recommendation there to include withdrawal of any of the sites. Public notification will occur mid to late February next year, so there is still plenty of time. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And we workshopped this on the 6th of November, members, so I'm sure we have some memory of the detail here. Councillor Watson, question, please.
Yes, and it may not be a program. I'm busily trying to find the exact location here, but I thought I thought the sites were meant to be reasonably specific rather than generalised. So, for instance, one of the sites, you know, is described as a coastline. I thought there was a greater degree of specificity involved with identification.
So Anna will try to answer that question in a general sense.
So it was, Mana Whenua initially nominated the sites that were of significance to them, and they articulated the values that were then sort of discussed with the Māori Cultural Heritage team and the cultural values expert in that team. And part of the process was trying to determine the site extent and the stories around the site relating to what was physically mapped. So for some sites where they may consist of part of a coastline, that coastline has a story or values of traditional uses that then relate back to that particular location. So because some of the sites they're not necessarily tangible archaeological sort of remains. Some of them are about the way an area was used, or perhaps a story that was told about it. So we have refined the sites, and the Māori Cultural Heritage team members have ensured that they do relate to, the values relate to a particular area that has been refined. In regards to landscapes, that is, some nominated sites were actually moved out of this process because they could not be articulated in one particular location. The stories about them were too broad. So every site that has gone forward does relate to the values and a particular story, or something that fits the RPS requirements for scheduling.
Okay, so thank you. That's a very good explanation. Just something I'd like to check. Does that represent a departure from the initial approach during the unitary plan, where I remember very specific sites and not the kind of storytelling aspect?
Well, I can certainly speak to that. So, in the notified version of the plan, we had sites of significance which were mapped and rolled over from the legacy district plans, and they varied in terms of their spatial, their shape and size. But we also had the 3,600 circles with the, I think, 250 metre or 500 metre radius or diameter, and those were the ones that were far more controversial because they were new, and they were all, they had a fairly arbitrary circle. So we've got a lot more precision now through the work with Mana Whenua to define things that make a lot more sense. So it's certainly a different approach to the sites of value to Mana Whenua, the circles. It's more similar to the rolled over sites in the legacy district plans, which were mapped with more sort of accuracy and precision. Yeah. So yes, we do have some sites that are quite expansive, and probably more expensive than the rolled over sites from the legacy plans, but it's a consistent approach to map them based on the values, not based on a more arbitrary circle. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, Noel, I just really want to reconcile the issue of the consultation with the local boards and their plans. So I just read some small variation between the open agenda and the closed agenda on the status of some local boards.
Yes.
Didn't make the difference.
So all local boards, no local board has opposed the plan change. They have, a couple of local boards have identified issues that will need to be cognizant of going forward.
So as far as you're concerned, any work with local boards has been completed other than those matters that they have specified of sensitivity going forward?
Yeah, so normally I would say it's finished, but given this is the first plan change that we have done of this type, we will be at a certain point of time going back to local boards and saying, here's part of the process. Just because we've had such a good response from all the local boards who are all on board, I think it's from a from a good management perspective, I think we'd be going back to the local boards. But after notification, not before notification.
Okay, I just, as I say, noted some variation on work that was yet to be completed and so forth. I don't want to labour that, but I would just like to say that it is a risk if you haven't completed your consultation with the local
Understand.
boards.
Thank you. Okay, somebody like to move? Member Namani, thank you. Councillor Filipaina, second. Don't have any comments to make on this? Oh, Member Namani.
Look, I just want to acknowledge that this is the first tranche, I guess, of what's really been quite a checkered history of attempts to protect important cultural heritage, Māori cultural heritage sites in Auckland. And on that basis, I want to commend the staff that have been working on this for their commitment in moving this through and getting us, you know, over the line. We've got a first tranche to kind of move through, and I hope there'll be a lot more because, you know, we say how important this is to our identity as Auckland in all our documents, and these are the living, breathing spaces that are important to keep protected. Also, of course, often, if not done appropriately, these processes can attract controversy. And we saw that in the Unitary Plan and in the best intentions to protect these places. So with that comes a caution that it's incumbent on us, on all of us, to make sure that we get our processes right, that the commitments we make to mana whenua and the protection of these sites in terms of reaching consensus are met, and equally so when it comes to local boards and private owners and everything. So I'm disappointed perhaps that there were a couple of sites maybe that ought not have been in this tranche had the process been followed, but at the same time I'm pleased that D enables us to kind of manage that, and always lessons learned moving through this. And so, yeah, thank you, and happy to see this go through.
Thank you, Member Namani.
Chair,
Councillor
I just
Filipaina.
wanted to sort of also acknowledge John, you and your team in regards to, and yourself, Chair, with D, that's come up in regards to that, because Member Ngā just covered off why. But also really just to mention the local boards in regards to how they've taken the process that we have. I see, you know, there's 400 sites, so there's a lot of discussion to take place. But it's really just to acknowledge everybody that's sort of got us to where we are now. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. Councillor Filipaina, and I apologise because I wasn't listening to you
That's right.
intently. There's just quite a lot going on just to get the meeting progressed.
Yeah, no problem. I just acknowledge your work in regards to where we are and D, along with John and the staff and the local boards.
Thank you, Councillor. Moved by Member Namani and seconded by Councillor Filipaina, and all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Now.